Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of Idiotsplaining. Today, we're diving into a holiday that gets weirder every year. We're talking Halloween. We'll be dressed like ghouls and goblins, gorge ourselves on candy, and scare the living daylights out of each other, all in the name of fun. But how did Halloween even start? Why do we carve pumpkins? And why all of our costumes just an excuse to wear wigs and spandex? Perhaps we may find out. Buckle up, because it's going to get spooky and also ridiculous.
Alright, let's start by diving into the ancient origins of Halloween, because surprise, it wasn't all about dressing up as inflatable dinosaurs. The holiday traces back about 2,000 years to an ancient Celtic festival called Samhain, celebrated on October 31st. Now this was way long before Halloween was the sugar-filled horror fest we know today. The Celts believed that on this night, the veil between the living and the dead was especially thin, which meant that ghosts, spirits, and even fairies could slip into the mortal world. It wasn't just a spooky season thing for them, they genuinely thought their dead ancestors might show up at their door. Now imagine trying to hand out mini Snickers bars to your great-great-great-great-granddad. To keep these ghosts at bay, the Celts would light huge bonfires and wear costumes made from animal skins. Their idea of costumes wasn't exactly sexy anything, it was more like horned deer with a fox's tail. All with the hope that if they looked scary enough, any wandering spirits would just leave them alone. They were like, oh look, if we mess up enough, maybe the ghosts will be like, never mind, wrong house. And that's how costumes started, folks. Simply trying to out-weird the weirdos on the other side. Fast forward to the 8th century, Halloween started evolving thanks to, you guessed it, Catholics. Pope Gregory III decided to make November 1st a day to honour saints and the faithful dead. And then they moved some of the celebrations from Samhain over to the 31st of October, calling it All Hallows Eve. This eventually morphed into Halloween. This way, the spooky and holy elements kind of blended like an unholy Halloween smoothie. Thanks, Pope Greg. As Halloween made its way to America, it turned into more of a community event. By the 19th century, a lot of Irish and Scottish immigrants were coming to the US, bringing their Halloween traditions with them. Soon enough, people were bobbing for apples, telling ghost stories, and throwing parties. Trick-or-treating didn't become popular until the 1930s, partly as a way to discourage kids from pulling pranks. Hey kids, here's some free candy. Now please don't egg my house. And it worked. Most of the time. Now Halloween may be big here, but other countries also have their own creepy, kooky, mysterious and spooky traditions. Around the world, people celebrate their dead in all sorts of ways, from light-hearted festivals to traditions that are generally kind of terrifying. So buckle up, because these things are about to get globally ghoulish. Starting with Mexico, the iconic Day of the Dead. This is celebrated from the 31st of October to the 2nd of November, and it's not just Halloween south of the border. It's a huge celebration complete with colourful altars, sugar skulls and marigolds everywhere. But unlike Halloween, it's not about scaring away spirits, it's about welcoming them home. Like, hey ancestors, come on in, we've got tamales and pan de muerto. It's beautiful. Families spend time at the graves of their loved ones, eating, drinking, and reminiscing. It's like a family reunion where everyone's invited, even the ones who aren't technically alive anymore. Then there's Japan with its Ubon festival. Usually in mid-August, it's believed that ancestor spirits return to visit their families. People light lanterns, which they set afloat on rivers, to guide the spirits back to the other side. It's a peaceful and reverent holiday, very different from the haunted house and fog machines we see in the States. Imagine telling a Japanese family about American haunted houses. Yeah, we pay people to jump out at us with chainsaws. No, they don't cut us, but yes, it's $40. Let's not forget the Philippines as well. Halloween, less about costumes, more about actual ghost hunting. They believe in a lot of supernatural creatures, like a shape-shifting vampire witch. Filipino families clean and decorate the graves of their loved ones in a tradition called undas, and sometimes even camp out at the cemetery. It's like a family sleepover, except, at a graveyard. Imagine if we had that here, just camping out in a cemetery, roasting marshmallows over grandma's grave. Spooky. And in Italy, All Saints' Day is taken very seriously. It's a public holiday, and the night before, people make small pastries called Bones of the Dead. This is to honour their departed. Nothing says rest in peace quite like almond-flavoured cookies shaped like femurs. They take them to the cemetery like a sweet offering to the afterlife. Italians don't do Halloween like we do, but Bones of the Dead? Respect. Now let's get into some Halloween news-related stuff. Every year around this time, the internet blesses us with some of the funniest and downright spookiest stories. Some people get a little too into the spirit, and others, well, they just prove that reality is often stranger than fiction. So let's dive into a few of my favourite Halloween news stories from recent years. The first one to start with, imagine this. You're driving home from work, tired, it's getting dark. All of a sudden, a zombie is chasing you down the road. Sounds like a horror movie, right? Well, this actually happened to a couple in Ohio. Turns out, it wasn't a real zombie, it was a guy who was dressed up as one to scare his friends. The only problem with this one is that they got lost. Instead of scaring his friends, they ended up banging on random car windows. The driver called the police, who had to calm everyone down. The zombie dude's friends forgot he was out there, and he had to wander back to civilization. And the scariest part of this bit? He wasn't sober. Also, it wouldn't be Halloween without a haunted house story. In Texas, a woman accidentally stabbed her friend at a haunted house. Now, before you panic on this, the friend was absolutely fine. But here's the kicker. She thought the knife she was holding was a prop given to her by one of the haunted house employees. The staff hands her a real knife, assuming she'd know better, and then a little spooky accident later, boom, her friend's got a mildly terrifying Halloween story for life. Thankfully, he was okay, but I would imagine he's keeping a distance from her and any props for a while. And speaking of props, how about the case of a real dead body Halloween display in North Carolina? A family decorated their lawn with what looked like a crime scene, complete with a fake body wrapped in trash bags. It looked a little too realistic, and sure enough, neighbours called 911. Police arrived and they were this close to launching an investigation before the family assured it was just Halloween fun. Now that's a commitment to the Halloween spirit. Though maybe next year they'll stick to skeletons and cobwebs. Here's another one. In Utah, there's an annual Halloween event called the Pumpkin Drop, where they haul a giant pumpkin into the air and drop it from about 100 feet up. Last year, though, a strong gust of wind turned that event into a pumpkin smash on someone else's car. No one was hurt, but the car owner had a real-life Halloween horror story and a new appreciation for comprehensive insurance. Finally, the story of the friendly ghost in London. Last time, a security camera picked up some footage of what looked like a ghost in a city park. People were freaking out. It was even making it to local news as evidence of paranormal activity. Turns out, though, the ghost was a guy in a white sheet who accidentally walked through the park's security zone while trying to get to a costume party. A little camera magic later, and boom, London's newest urban legend was born. Even the guy didn't realise he was on camera. He was just taking a shortcut. So if you're ever in London and you see a ghost on a parked camera, maybe give them a friendly wave. Now, before we wrap this show up into some mummy skins, here's a fun question. How about the rest of the world seeing Halloween, eh? We might think everybody's on board with costumes, candy, and creepy decorations, but perceptions of Halloween vary wildly across different countries. For some places, Halloween is a quirky American holiday. For others, it's growing into a big celebration. So let's take a little tour. First up, Japan. Halloween has only recently taken off there, and honestly, they might be doing it better than we are. For Japanese people, Halloween is all about costumes, and they take it to another level. Cosplay culture in Japan is huge, so it makes sense. But here's the twist with this. Rather than spooky or scary, costumes are quirky or weird. People dress as things like traffic cones, train seats, or food items, making it more about fun than fear. There's also the famous Kawasaki Halloween Parade, where thousands of people gather in incredible costumes. For Japan, a Halloween is like a cosplay party with a dash of spookyless trick or treat and more. See who's got the wackiest outfit. In Germany, Halloween is a bit more controversial. They have a holiday called All Saints' Day on November 1st. It's more a somber religious day, honouring the dead. Halloween isn't as widely celebrated here because many Germans feel it distracts from the seriousness. However, in recent years, Halloween has started gaining popularity, especially amongst younger people who love dressing up and hitting themed parties. It's still not something every household would necessarily celebrate. You might see costumes in big cities like Berlin or Munich, but in smaller towns, Halloween just isn't a thing. In Brazil, Halloween has been met with some resistance. There's a bit of backlash against it. Some people see Halloween as an American import that overshadows Brazil's culture. But they do have a holiday to celebrate something or other. A trickster character in Brazil, actually, in Brazilian folklore, who's a mischievous one-legged kid with a red cap. It's their spin on a spooky legend, and some Brazilians encourage celebrating this instead of Halloween, but that doesn't stop Halloween from growing in popularity in urban areas. In France, Halloween is more of an American thing, again. It didn't catch on with them until the late 90s, but even today it's mostly celebrated by kids and teenagers who enjoy the excuse of dressing up and throwing parties. French people just aren't big on door-to-door trick-or-treating either, so if you show up at someone's door in a costume asking for candy, you might get a confused stare instead. You're more likely to see Halloween-themed events at bars and clubs. For French people, Halloween is often just another excuse for a party, with a side of spooky decor. Over in Russia, it's a mixed bag. It's gained popularity with a younger crowd, especially in major cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg, where you'll find Halloween parties and events. However, the Russian Orthodox Church is not a fan of it, seeing as promoting superstition and other stuff. As a result, some schools and communities have even banned Halloween celebrations. For some Russians, Halloween is seen to be a strange Western influence, while for others, it's another reason to dress up and party. So the vibe around Halloween really depends on where you are and who you ask. Finally, Mexico. Halloween coexists with Day of the Dead, as we mentioned earlier. It's incredibly meaningful and rooted in Mexican culture, focusing on honouring deceased loved ones rather than scaring away spirits. They see Halloween as a fun side celebration, and maybe the more traditional and respectfulness of this. In recent years, Halloween became popular, especially with younger people who enjoy costumes and spooky fun, and still it remains the main focus with its rich cultural traditions and family-centered festivities. So while over here buying candy in bulk and carving pumpkins, people around the world have their own unique and skeptical take on Halloween. Some embrace it, others think that we're just mad for celebrating it, and for a lot of people, it's another holiday that slowly but surely creeps into the culture.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, as a wrap on today's episode. Thank you for listening, and of course next week we'll have the spooky bloopers. We did use some sound effects in this one. All of the credits are down below, and also a credit to Werq. If you have a subject that you would like us to talk about next time, leave it with us. If you can find where we are, all the links are below. A massive thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed it, make sure you share it with friends. And we'll hopefully see you next time. I've got to stop doing that.